So I've been trying to learn some new stuff, and what I've been doing, I haven't been fishing Lake Okeechobee much, but I've been fishing offshore on some of the clearer lakes in Central Florida. And one of the big keys up there is brush piles. I figured out some things with bait, like moving and suspended offshore. But to catch the bigger fish, for the most part, it really relates to rotating and having a set of brush piles and even shell bars, which I happened to just find one the other day, which is sick. But what we're going to talk about today is just a quick little thing. I've been fishing a lot of football jigs on these brush piles. Most guys really don't fish them. It's something I was doing in North Central Florida. It's a great way to fish ledges, timber, whatever. Whenever you're getting deep and you need to kind of roll over or roll down or roll through something, football jigs are sick, and they have kind of a crazy little action where they rock and that, and the bass eat them up. And it's a great way to fish these brush piles. But what I've found after losing about 437 jigs is that you got to make a few tweaks to them. And I also kind of figured out some, I don't know, some other interesting little tweaks that you might be able to take and apply to some of the stuff you're doing. So first things first, well, the football jig that I'm using, it's this Gambler football jig. It's just a basic football jig head. You can see it has a little water gap hook. So the first tweak that I do, and like I said, it took me way too many lost jigs to figure this out, is the hook, even though it's set behind the brush guard right there, you know, if you hit that wood or if you snap that jig out of the wood, you're gonna hang up. That's just the way it works, and you don't want too crazy thick of a brush guard. So what I do is I take my pliers and I go right around basically where the hook starts to bend into a circle right there, and I just give it a little up push. Actually, a little more than that's gonna do. Now, you don't want to do it too many times, kind of trying to show you guys so it kind of wasn't holding onto it tight. The more obviously you bend the hook, the more likely it's gonna break. But doing it just once, I haven't had an issue with it. Just yesterday, I was using one that I rigged up and I landed a 7.5. So it's not that big of a deal. Just don't be doing it multiple times. But as you can see, it's not the prettiest bend, but what it does is it sets that hook behind that brush guard really well. And actually, to be perfectly honest with you, I might even go just a hair more. Basically, the way I try to do it is I try to make the hook point parallel with the brush guard. Now, obviously, you see how it kind of doesn't come through? Here's the trick. You're gonna have to hit the fish when you set it up like this. But what's gonna happen is you're not gonna be hung up so often on that brush pile. So, you know, if you're breaking off jigs in the brush pile, you're spooking fish out. So if you can come through there a little bit clean, a little bit more clean, it just saves you a lot of frustration, and you're not gonna spook fish out. Because usually when it comes to these piles, it's about the first and second cast, and that's when you're gonna catch your biggest fish. So that's a little tweak to keep you a little more snagless on those football jigs. That wider gap hook is nice, but the only trick is you just want to curve it in a little. You're gonna have to hit the fish pretty decent, but you're not gonna lose them. It keeps them buttoned up more, and it also keeps you from snagging up. Here's the other thing that I've been doing. As you can see in front of me, I got a bunch of skirts and some weird looking hot dog baits. I've seen some brim down. I actually dropped the camera down once and I saw some brim on the brush piles, and I've seen brim kind of roaming around the grass and bluegill and that. So what I tried to do, since these lakes, there is shad in them, but most of the time the bigger bass are eating the bluegill. What I tried to do is mimic the skirt, or mimic the color pattern, I guess, of the brim. So what I've been doing is I've been making custom skirts, and I do it all with, Gambler sells like loose layers, but you can get them from pretty much anywhere. I've just been using the ones from there. But really looking at some of the colors that you're finding in whatever bait is what they're focusing on in the brush pile. Like I said, here it's brim, so I got like a brown, orange, green with a little bit of like magic craw mixed in. I got one with a little bit of green pumpkin and black mixed in, but still with kind of like a smoke blue. But basically, I'll tell you what, one, you know, it might not do anything when it comes down to it. You might be able to use a straight watermelon skirt, but frankly, I have more confidence in it, and I think it's kind of cool. So I like making them up and tweaking them so they're a little more customized, and it makes the jig look pretty sick. You can see right here, you know, it has a lot of different colors. Obviously in nature, you're never finding one hue or one tint of the same color all, you know, just straight. So, you know, those brim, those bait are going to be kind of varied in their coloration. So since I'm fishing some clearer water, I'm trying to make a more natural, sort of subtle presentation that really matches up with what's going to be swimming on those piles. Because like I said, that first and second cast is really important. So you want to have your best presentation down there right off the bat. So this is an example of a jig I've already rigged up. I got the custom skirt on it. I've bent out the hook already. Here's the other little weird thing that I've been doing. A lot of guys fish worms on these things, and even on jigs, you know, you're fishing like paddle tail kind of, or paddle crawl trailers, like a Mega Daddy or a Flappy Daddy or like a Chigger crawl, and those work great. I've caught a lot of fish on those kinds of things, but you know, trying to tweak stuff and just noticing, I've noticed I can catch a lot of fish on a Wacky rig out here, and some decent fish too. So what I've done is, this is a Damiki stinger, and I'm sure guys have already done it. You know, a lot of offshore fishermen know a lot more than me, but this is something I found that's kind of cool, and I've caught some bigger fish on it when I can't catch them on like a paddle tail crawl on the back. So all I'm doing, this is the smaller version of the Damiki stinger. This is the 4-inch. All I'm doing is taking this jig, my custom jig, going right through the middle of this Damiki stinger. I like to call it a hot dog because it looks like a hot dog. And you have probably the ugliest bait you've seen in a while, but it's crazy because here's what happens. It basically wacky rigs, and the Damiki stinger, it's kind of like a denser plastic, so it snaps a little bit, but it is still pretty soft. So it'll, when you drag it forward, it snaps back. So it really moves, it quivers, I guess you could say. The other really cool thing about this is when it comes to the brush piles, the most important part about it is staying in the pile. So what this also allows you to do is it slows down your presentation and doesn't allow the bait to move forward as fast because you have the resistance of the Wacky rig. And it's just weird. You know, I know that sounds stupid, but frankly, there's a lot of weird things that don't catch fish. But when you find a weird thing and it catches them, you're definitely on to something. And this is kind of a weird little tweak that at least I know a lot of guys down here aren't doing it. I don't know, further north up on the ledges, I'm sure they're playing around with stuff like this. But especially for this clear water where a Wacky rig really shines, you pop it on that jig, you drag it through, you can kind of twitch it or drag it. That bait quivers. You don't want to use too gigantic of a one, otherwise you lose that sort of that snapback quiver. But that does the deal on some of these piles, man. And I've been catching a few decent ones on it. When I can't catch them on a worm, I can't catch them on a Carolina rig. And ironically, the bigger ones, I guess, not even the bigger ones. It makes sense the bigger ones are biting the jig, but I'm just surprised at the numbers that I'm catching on this. And I don't know if it's because of the Wacky rig deal or the custom skirt, but usually, you know, the jig isn't a numbers deal. And you can usually catch a lot more on plastics, but the opposite has been the case. So check it out. These are football heads from Gambler. You can kind of tweak them out using that hook bend. Custom skirts, make them with any kind of layers you want, match the hatch. It's a lot of fun to do, gives you a bunch of confidence. And then try this out. It's a Damiki stinger. You could probably do it with just about any Senko style bait, Gambler Ace and that. I kind of like this one because it's a little more compact and it looks funny, and call it a hot dog. And it really twitches right when it comes down to it. So check it out, guys. Give it a try on the piles, on the ledges, on drops, on rocks. It's kind of a fun way to do it. Tight lines. Hope this helps you out.